Time once again for one of those limited recipe challenge things, except with a difference. This time, the limitation, instead of being a financial budget, is going to be that the ingredients are chosen randomly using one of these. So I've got a list, well, I've got a set of lists from which I'm going to choose random ingredients. I've got protein, staples, fat, vegetables, fruit, herbs, spices, sweet things, and so on. I get to pick one of each of these things, two of each from vegetables and fruit. I get salt, pepper and water for free, kitchen facilities and the energy to run them, pots and pans, shoes on my feet, those sorts of things are not part of the challenge. The challenge is to try to make 3 meals, breakfast, lunch and dinner, of which lunch must have an appetizer and dinner must have a dessert, from the random ingredients that I pick from these lists. Oh, I meant to add, I have to use every one of these ingredients at least once. Now, so that you can see what I'm doing, I've moved the camera up a little bit. So I'm going to roll these dice all in one take with a timer running, so you can see that I'm not making use of an opportunity to re-roll if I don't like one particular ingredient. So we're rolling for protein now, and we've got eggs. Now for staples, rice. Okay, now for fat, we've got beef dripping. And for vegetables, we've got peas. And my second roll, which has got to be different. So if we roll another 5, we've got to roll again. So second roll is cauliflower. Fruit, oranges, and oranges again. So no, we roll again, and that is a 4, which is blackberries. Okay, now for condiments, I've got brown sauce. For herbs, I've got, can you see that? That's a 4. I've got thyme. For spices, I've got curry powder. For sweet things, gummy bears. Okay. Oh boy. Right, okay, well, and for my random bonus item, so one of these things on this list, it is number 3, which is dried mushrooms. Okay, well, bit of a weird set of ingredients, but I think I can probably do something with that. Having fat as beef dripping is a bit of a challenge. Anyway, so a few of these things I've got to buy in. Gummy bears I don't think I've got. I'm not sure I've got a full bottle of brown sauce. I've got dried mushrooms. I'll have to go and pick some blackberries. Cauliflower I haven't got. Beef dripping I haven't got. So got to get a few things. Let's assemble our ingredients and then see what we can make out of them. Not been a great year for blackberries. We haven't had any significant rainfall for a couple of months. We're in kind of the middle of a drought right now. However, there are always a few exceptions if you look around. So we've got a fairly decent bush here. There must be a bit of a flow of water under the soil here. So I'm going to pick a few of these blackberries. They look quite nice. Yeah, see, there's a mostly decent one. So I'll pick some blackberries. I hadn't actually planned on foraging as such, but I could buy blackberries in the supermarket, I suppose. But Why would I buy them when I can pick them wild? When I pick blackberries, I always check the stalk scar, and I'm looking for ones that have a green, pale green stalk scar in there. Often, if there's, yeah, that one's okay. Often if there's any damage inside the fruit, and especially if there are insects in there, you'll see staining, like purple juice staining on the stalk scar, or it'll be brown. And so it's a little bit laborious, but I get better fruit if I diligently check that. Yeah, that one's okay-ish. That's a bit overripe, that one. I'm going to let it go. See, this is a kind of subspecies or variety of blackberry where often the fruits don't ripen all that evenly. And so that one there, ripe at the bottom, unripe there, that will be very sour. So again, I'm going to let that one go. I've just seen some really nice ones right in the middle there. Let's just see if we can get to them. And I can just feel from some of these blackberries that they're not completely ripe. So that one there, it looks completely ripe, but it's not. It's a bit too firm. So I'm not going to pick those because they'll be a bit sour. So that's an example of one where there might be a lot of insect activity going on in there. If you're worried about that sort of thing, then, you know, I mean, some people say to soak them when you get them home. I kind of can't be bothered with that. Last one at the tip of my reach. Oh, was it worth it? Yes, it was. Okay, probably 250 grams of blackberries there. If you're wondering what the background noise is, there's all sorts of construction going on over here. And as always, the best blackberries are just out of reach. Not because they're doing that to spite us, but because they're the best blackberries because nobody's been in there to pick them. Wow, look at that one there. But I can't reach it. I'd have to undo some nuts and bolts to get in there, and probably not a great idea to do that. But there we go, yeah, the best blackberries are always just out of reach. So just to recap, ingredients for the day are salt, pepper, water, eggs, rice, beef dripping, peas and cauliflower, the peas are in the freezer, oranges and blackberries, brown sauce. I've got the HP Fruity, it is brown sauce, but it's a little bit sweeter. I'm hoping that will help me a bit. We've got thyme, which I'll pick in the garden, curry powder, gummy bears, and dried mushrooms. I'll be using my own homemade dried mushrooms. So what a weird selection of stuff we've got to work with here, and this I think is definitely going to be a challenge. I'm going to try and apply a little bit more planning than I would normally do to this. So I'm going to cook some rice and I'm going to start preparing the dessert for this evening's dinner. 1 cup of rice, 2 cups of water, but did I wash the rice? You'll never know. Breakfast is going to be some kind of fruity rice thing again. But the only thing I have to sweeten the rice is these gummy bears. So I'm going to pick out the clear ones, I think. Which, let me just see if I can discern their flavour. So these gummy bears. Fruit. The clear ones are actually fairly neutral fruity flavour. So I think we'll have a few of those in there. Probably enough. How many have I got? 4, 8, 9. I'll add about the same volume of water as we've got gummy bears there. We'll just get that warmed up. The aim is to melt and or dissolve those in water. I think they're meant to be pear flavour. Okay, well that went better than I thought. While we're waiting for rice and things, let's get a head start on some dried mushrooms. So I'm going to put a load of these dried mushrooms into some cold water. Okay, and I'll cover that and leave those to soak. That's going to be for lunch. That rice is at the point where the liquid has almost disappeared now. So a spoonful of that rice is going to come out and go into the pan that's got the jelly liquid. And then I'm going to turn the heat off here because that rice will continue cooking in the residual heat. Over here, however, I'm going to continue simmering this rice in the dissolved gummy bear liquid, which I hope will just sweeten it, and it will absorb some of that liquid and cook down and maybe go a little bit creamy. While that rice is just gently bubbling away, I'm going to prepare some orange segments. So to get nice orange segments with no pith on them, I'm just going to slice off the skin, and then I'm just going to find the line where the edge of the segment is and just cut inside of it like that and get perfect peeled orange segments. Got a little bit of the central pith there, so I'll just trim that off, and then we'll just go the other side of that line there like that. I'm going to squeeze the juice out of these, what's left here, and it is worth it to get orange segments that have no skin on them. Now if it looks like the blade is getting close to my thumb, you need to not worry about that, because this is one of these things where the camera is making it look more dangerous than it really is. Okay, so that bit is not going to be wasted, because what I'll do now is give that a squeeze. I'll get all the juice out of that. The rest of this rice is now completely cooked and nice and fluffy, separate grains. I'll transfer that into a container, we'll cool it down and then chill it in the fridge. Time to plate up breakfast. So breakfast, we've got this kind of sweetened jelly rice. Not a lot of it, but I'm not confident it's going to be lovely, so that's probably not a bad thing. And I'm going to have that with just a couple of little wedges of orange. And I will pick out the juiciest, sweetest looking blackberries from here. In case you're wondering, I haven't washed these blackberries. I don't tend to wash blackberries. I just pick them from places that are clean enough that don't need washing. Not very worried about a little bit of dirt in my food. It's a small price to pay for the natural and delicious aroma of unwashed, fresh, wild blackberries. I find that washing them destroys the aroma. Your mileage may differ, but I'm not going to start washing mine now. So there we go, breakfast. It's kind of fruity rice, which seems to be a bit of a thing for these challenges. Off we go and give it a taste. Well, here it is. Let's taste a bit of this rice first and see if we've made anything that's even palatable. It actually tastes quite nice. The grains are still a bit firm. I think I should have cooked the rice a bit more before adding it to the liquid. It tastes okay. Yeah, the grains are a little bit firm and separate. It would be nicer if they'd been cooked down to the point where they're creamy. That's really good with the blackberries. Because those gummy bears have got a little bit of acidity as well as all that sweetness, they really bring out the flavour of those blackberries. It could be just the warmth as well. Not quite such a good combination with the orange. It is peculiar. The gelatin in the bears is giving me that kind of sticky lips feeling that you get from when you eat a good risotto. And the blackberries, that's really tasty. Okay, what about both together? Better than the orange on its own. Squish. I think I probably should have rejected that one in the field. So they're not in any way cooked, but the warmth of the rice really does bring out the blackberry aroma. Not the worst breakfast I've had on one of these challenge videos. Probably the most urgent bit of prep now is to get some of the orange bears. Actually, that's not an orange one. What flavour is that then? Fruit. Anyway, as I say, we'll get some of these orange bears. Oh, we'll add some of those as well. I don't know what flavour that is. Tangerine or fruit. We'll have some lemon. That should be enough. Okay. And I'm going to do what I did before, melt those with a little bit of water. And I think we'll have some leaves of thyme in there. Okay, it's all melted, but I'm just going to heat that gently until I can smell the thyme. I'm just going to add the orange juice from those segments as well. I've got a little ramekin that's been in the freezer. And if everything's right, we've got orange and thyme jelly there. So that's going to go in the fridge now to set. It needs probably all day to set, so let's hope it's got enough time. No pun intended. Going to make something in the vicinity of deviled eggs. Don't have all of the ingredients, but we're going to do the best we can. So I've got a pan of water just coming up to the boil. Into that, I'm going to cook 3 eggs to give myself a safety margin. And start the timer, 12 minutes. So after about 4 minutes, it's no longer necessary to heat the pan. We'll just make sure the lid is on securely and put that on the back. The residual heat of the water will continue cooking those eggs for the remaining 8 minutes. That's 12 minutes total immersion time in the boiling water. It's still really hot. And now I'm going to transfer them into cold water. Apparently you don't want to leave them cooling for too long or else you get that kind of grey film on the outside of the yolks. Only cosmetic, of course. I'm going to let them cool down for 15 minutes before I start peeling them. They had warmed up their water quite a bit, so I'm putting some cold water there from the fridge on them. Right, now these eggs, I need to carefully peel. Apparently it's better if you have eggs that are not quite so fresh, but that seemed to peel okay. However, we got a problem here. The yolk's slightly off centre. Never mind, let's see how we get on. So I'm going to chop through there, I think. Close enough. Now these yolks are going to come out into a bowl. Yeah, we're going to have trouble filling those because it's quite close to the edge of the white, but never mind, let's see how we get on. This was part of the reason for cooking a couple of extra eggs. Hopefully I will end up with some that are better than others here and I can select. So let's go through there. Interesting. I think we'll just get rid of that little bit. That's what would have been a blood spot, I think. Less than perfect eggs. We'll do the best we can. I mean, I don't think there's any harm in eating those blood spots, but well, that's not looking good so far. Well, here goes. 3rd time's the charm, they say. That could be the thumbnail. I'll just carefully put those in a bowl and set those aside in the fridge. Now the tricky part, which is to make the filling. Now we normally add mayonnaise here, and I don't have mayonnaise, so it's going to be brown sauce, because that's what we do have. So a squirt of brown sauce. These are going to be quite red deviled eggs. Curry powder, about a heaped teaspoonful, about probably a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a very generous grind of black pepper. And let's see what this meshes up like. So I think these could be like red deviled eggs, so maybe I'm inventing a thing here. I think we'll have a tiny splash of water just to loosen that up a bit. A tiny taste, not bad. So a bit more of this fruity brown sauce in there. Yeah, that's better. It's a kind of creamy texture now. It was a little bit jellified. I thought I was going to put a raw egg yolk in here just to make it a bit more luscious, but I don't think it needs it. And a bit more in each of those two. And these two I'm not going to serve as such, but since there is some filling left, chef's privilege, I'll just taste that without any other garnish and stuff. Pretty good. So I would say that's quite different from your kind of standard deviled egg, but not in any kind of bad way. To go with those deviled eggs, I'm going to have some of the cauliflower, but a particular piece, which I often enjoy as kind of chef's privilege when I'm cooking with cauliflower. I'm just going to remove these leaves. Some of these inner leaves are really quite nice and fresh, and that's just cabbage basically. So we're not throwing that away. I'll keep that, and that's going to form part of other dishes. But the piece I'm after right now is the stalk. So I'm just going to cut into there. like that. We'll separate the florets. I'll put them in the bag. So all of the cauliflower, that can go back in the bag for now. This piece here, the stalk, just needs a little bit of trimming up. And the inside of a cauliflower root is quite a lot like a mooly radish, you know, a daikon. So these bits here, well, it's just crunchy radish-like vegetable. I'm going to cut it into very, very thin sticks. Like that. Little matchsticks. So we'll just put a little bit of salt on them first, and a couple of my softest blackberries I can find in this box. Let's go for more than a couple, let's go for 4 of the softest blackberries I can find. I'm just going to squish through this tea strainer and see what we end up with. Might be enough, together with just a few more drips of orange juice out of that container with the segments. Okay, just let that sit for 5 minutes. Meanwhile, the other bit of cauliflower, I'm just going to leave as is. I think I probably should taste one of these before we go and assume it's nice. Here we go. Oh, well, that's interesting. Time to try to make this into something. So on each of these deviled eggs, we'll have a few pieces of the pickled cauliflower stem, as well as a couple of pieces of the not pickled cauliflower stem. Don't know whether it will be even possible to taste the contrast there. Okay, well, it's a starter, you can't deny that. Always a bit more pepper will help. Okay, well, deviled-ish eggs, they certainly look a bit devilish. What do they taste like? Well, maybe I'm insufficiently fussy. That is a very distinct possibility. These are quite nice. I think I'd make these again. These are in need of redemption. There's not enough ingredient here. They need something fresh and green with them, maybe a bit of watercress or something. But they're not bad. Well, I think that qualifies as a starter. They did look weird, but they were very tasty. Lunch is going to be the closest we can get to risotto with the available ingredients, which is not that close. We've got the wrong kind of rice. I'm not going to bend the rules and use more than one kind of rice. So we've got long grain rice, which is not the right kind of rice for risotto, but it will kind of work. The mushrooms have rehydrated. Look at the colour of that liquid there. That's now a rich mushroom stock. And I will use these pieces here. I know some people don't like to use mushrooms once they're rehydrated. Some of the flavour will have come out of them, but fresh mushrooms aren't always that flavourful anyway, so I think that's, you know, pretty much a wash. So we'll get those pieces out of there. Squeeze the juice back in. I have half a glass of rice, so I think I'm probably going to need about 1.5 of these glasses of stock. I will just refrain from pouring the last little bit there because sometimes you get a little bit of grit in there. And that's my mushroom stock. And I'm going to have some thyme with this, so I'll just strip off the leaves from some of this. This is Turkish thyme from the garden. I don't want to chop this, so I'm actually just going to use the back of the knife just to bruise it a bit, which will help some of the flavour come out. Good. Right, that can go straight in with the rice. Pinch of salt, and we'll start off with just a bit of that mushroom stock. I've got here the more tender inner leaves from the cauliflower. Just basically, this is cabbage. And I'm going to shred that quite small, or quite thin. The midribs could be a little bit tough, but if I cut them thin like this, they won't be. And every time this rice looks like it's drying out a little bit, I Give it another little splash of stock. Make sure nothing's sticking. I think at this point I'm going to put in these mushrooms. Quite a lot of mushrooms here, because I do want these to cook. They've rehydrated, but they're not exactly cooked. And I think just for a little bit of extra flavour and kind of body in that rice dish, I will chop up one of the cauliflower florets really fine. That'll just give the rice another dimension of flavour. And this is why the right kind of rice really matters. This rice is cooking, but it's not producing the starch that's going to make it all saucy and creamy like you would get with risotto. So we're going to have mushroom rice here, but we're not going to have mushroom risotto. But anyway, I think I'll have a bit of pepper in there as well. I am tempted to throw in a couple of lemon jelly bears because the gelatin, I mean it's lemon flavour, the gelatin would give it a bit of thickness and a bit of ooze. It's got sugar, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's lemon flavour. Would that be a bad thing to add in here? I think it's something that people will hate. Just got to make sure that those melt now. I'm sure they will in the remaining cooking time. I don't know that that's going to make a big difference, but we'll see. That might just be the thing that brings it together. That might also be the one flavour note in here which turns out to be really hateful and loathsome. It does seem to be thickening it a bit, although that might just be coincidence. That might just be that we've naturally arrived at that point. They have melted already, I think. I very nearly forgot peas. Peas are a thing we can have, and the heat of that rice will just thaw them and gently cook them. Okay, off the heat now, and we'll let that stand. I'm going to fry the cabbage, and I'm going to use a bit of beef dripping, which is basically what they used to make candles out of, also known as tallow. Beef fat. Fat is up to temperature. In goes the cauliflower green. A little pinch of salt. Now, while that's frying, I'm just going to squeeze an orange. I've washed and scrubbed this orange as best I can so that I can use some of the zest. I don't think it's actually all that possible, or at least certainly not easy, to buy unwaxed oranges in the UK. Some nice little crispy browning bits going on there with that cabbage. I'm going to turn that up now, and orange juice. I'm just going to simmer that until it reduces down and goes a little bit sticky. Meanwhile, let's have a taste of this. Not bad. A bit more salt. A bit more pepper. As you can see, the orange juice has reduced right down now and it's starting to go sticky. That's good. I am going to resist the temptation to throw in some gummy bears in here. We can't put them in everything. Time for plating up lunch. Should we do this all fancy like? Well, almost. Kind of need something else to go here, don't we? But never mind. Let's just assume it was meant to be like that. Okay, well I think we might just have a few little strands of orange zest on there. Let's get that to the table and give it a taste. Okay, well there it is. It's kind of mushroom rice with orange fried cabbage. Ah, that's what that bit of plate was for. I'm actually most curious about this. So let's give that a taste first. Oh, that's really nice. Something about cabbage when it's got a tiny bit of toasting on it. But the sweetness and acidity and fruitiness of that orange juice is just really good. That is really nice. And the mushroom rice needs a bit more salt. It's not risotto, but that's quite tasty. And as to whether these two things go together, yeah, they kind of don't. It's not a disaster having them together. Lemon would have been nicer on that cabbage if it's going to go with this. But as two separate things, they're really good. Almost forgot to mention, can I taste the lemon gummy bears in this rice? I don't doubt if I can. There was only 2 of them in there. No, can't taste them, but I can get the kind of mouthfeel of that gelatin. So yeah, maybe that wasn't a terrible idea. Dinner is going to be cauliflower 2 different ways with curry fried rice. So I'm just going to cut these cauliflower florets in half to try to expose a bit of surface area. The other way is I'm going to cut some thin slices from the middle part of the cauliflower here. That's what I want, pieces like that. And I'm going to fry them and hopefully they'll go crispy. These little bits I'll just throw in with the rice. So those cauliflower florets will just go on there and steam for a few minutes until they start to tenderise. And to mix in with the rice, I want some of these darker bits of the cauliflower greens, which perfectly usable if they're trimmed up. I will lose the midribs on these though, because the midribs of these bigger leaves tend to be a little bit tough. Those can go in the compost. Need to make a kind of barbecue sauce for these cauliflower florets that are going to be baked, which, well, we haven't got a lot to work with. Going to be mostly based on this fruity brown sauce. Pepper, a bit of salt, and a bit of curry powder. Really basically what we have. I'm not going to put too much curry powder in there because the curry powder is going to go with the rice. I don't want everything to taste exactly the same. And I will chop up some thyme leaves and put them in there as well. So those have just been steamed for about 5 minutes and they are beautifully tender without falling apart. I'll just get them nicely coated in the sauce, let them sit for a bit so it can run in amongst all of those little branches, and I'll give it another stir before we put it in the oven. A little bit of fat in the bottom of the tray, just so it doesn't stick. Beef drippings are really hard fat. The oven's actually going to be used for baked potatoes for Jenny as well, so it's not just the oven going on for cauliflower, that'd be crazy. Okay, that fat's melted, and we'll just get it coating the bottom of this pan. Cauliflower pieces, we'll just spread them out in there like that, and that'll go back in the oven for, I don't know, 20 minutes maybe, until it sort of browns and caramelizes a bit, which should be just enough time to get on with these other bits we need to do. So again, some of this fat, this is the worst possible fat I think I could have picked for the list, but there it is. I think beef dripping is going to get replaced on the list by some other fat. If you've got an idea for a different candidate that should be on the list, maybe coconut oil or something, then do let me know. So that fat is just coming up to frying temperature now. I'll get these thin slices of cauliflower in there, and I am going to turn that down so they're just sizzling, because I really need them to cook through at the same time as crisping up. Meanwhile, the cold rice goes in there. I'll just break that up a bit, make it easier to handle. Curry powder directly onto the rice. Weird, I know. You just coat that rice with the curry powder. And I'm just going to check on that cauliflower. Yep, starting to just toast ever so slightly on one side, so we'll just flip it over. Might come back and do that side again. That is definitely enough on that one. So this rice is going to be kind of coated in curry powder before I fry it, and just to help that stick. And I realise I am using the same flavours over and over, but this is mostly curry, tiny bit of sauce. The cauliflower obviously is mostly sauce, tiny bit of curry, so not exactly the same, but that's just to help that stick. Into that rice are going to go ribbons of the cauliflower leaves, so ribbons of cabbage, plus those bits of cauliflower cut up because why not, and some peas because again it's what we've got. Now it is the same kind of combinations of ingredients because those are the ingredients we've got to combine. What would really work ever so nicely in this is an onion, but there's no onions in our pantry today, so we've got to work with what we got. So that's that. This fried cauliflower, not actually sure to what extent this is really going to work, but as each piece gets done, I'll bring it out onto a piece of absorbent paper just to get rid of some of that fat, and I'll get a bit of salt on there while it's hot. Now that the pan is free, we've got a bit more fat in there, and in goes the rice. And I'm in two minds whether to put an egg in this and kind of combine it in, or whether to serve it with a runny fried egg on top. So they say when all you have is a hammer, everything looks a bit like a nail, and I guess that's where we're at with this, in a way. And we'll just hopefully end up with a bit of a kind of sweet and sour vibe here, but that'll give the rice some much needed moisture. Right, time to put this all together. So, spicy fried rice, sticky barbecue cauliflower on the side. That has worked. Ow, this oven glove is useless. Not so crispy pieces of toasted cauliflower. Didn't stay as pretty as I'd hoped, and they taste okay then. And we'll just get an egg on here. Well, let's get that to the table and give it a taste. I actually think for one of my kind of limited challenge meals, that doesn't look too bad. That might tell you more about some of the past meals than it does about this one though. Right, let's try this barbecue cauliflower. That's good. That really works. The cooking has driven off some of the sharpness of that HP sauce. It's actually a really good barbecue sauce and quite nice on cauliflower. The toasted cauliflower, it's a different texture and flavour, so that's good. It's quite nice. The rice, good. I think I was right to add that orange juice. And let's try a bit of the rice when it's got some egg with it. Good. A little bit more salt on there. Right, a bit of everything together. So barbecued, toasted, cauliflower, egg, and savoury rice all together. It's strange. It's a strange meal because it's just cauliflower lots of different ways, but it's good. It's good. I would definitely make something along these lines again. Basting that rice with curry powder has definitely worked. Oh, I should cook 2 eggs now. Really happy with this. Well, there's nothing actually stopping me going and getting ice cream. I didn't say this was going to be the only thing I would eat today. The challenge is just to make meals. But I've got some ice cream in the freezer. I think we'll have that instead. Well, that was pretty good. I actually really enjoyed that. I don't know what that looked like on the camera, but that was quite a nice, satisfying meal. I think I would have liked 2 eggs, but I only cooked 1. There it is. So anyway, if that was too weird for you, dessert is still to come. Well, this is the jelly I made this morning, and as you can see, it's very well and truly set. So that's good. We've got to get that out in one piece though. So I'm going to stand that in some boiling water. Okay, I think that's free. So there we go. Orange jelly. It's just actually really quite melty, but very definitely jelly. To serve with this, we're going to have some blackberries in a kind of syrup. Cooking the blackberries first would make this a bit easier, but this will have to do. Okay, we've got some nice blackberry kind of pulp or juice there. And I'm going to thicken that with a little bit of jelly, specifically red gummy bears. I think we only need about maybe 4 or 5. And I'm just going to melt those gummy bears into this blackberry juice. Okay, and I think they're gone, that's it. And we're just going to toss in a few more blackberries and just allow that syrup to coat them and warm them through. That's all. Orange segments we'll just arrange on one side, I think. And then syrup coated blackberries on the other side. How about that? Let's get that to the table and give it a taste. Okay, well, the orange segments are just orange segments. The blackberries, however, are in a kind of fruits of the forest syrup, I suppose, because that's strawberry flavoured gummy bears with blackberries. And just being ever so slightly warm really enhances their flavour. And the jelly, well, it's a bit firm, to be honest. You could have used a bit more water in there or orange juice, but let's give it a taste. Yeah, tiny little bit firm for a dessert jelly, but packed with flavour. Really tasty dessert though. Doesn't compromise on flavour at all. The orange flavoured gummy bears are actually the kind of strongest flavour in the pack. And so, yeah, there's no shortage of... Eva, would you shut up? There's no shortage of flavour in this dessert. Really happy with that. And actually, orange and blackberry might seem an unlikely combination, but I know orange and raspberry already works because I've tried that before. Orange and blackberry is very reminiscent of blood orange. It's that orange but slightly berry flavour. I know an orange is a berry, but you know what I mean. Anyway, super happy with that. So, reflections and maybe regrets on this whole exercise. I think on the whole, this is actually quite a good way to frame this kind of challenge because it makes the challenge very specific. The challenge is creativity, not sourcing things. It's about how do you combine these things to make coherent meals rather than have you got enough of something. And that makes it easier in one way to focus on the creative kind of thrust of it. But at the same time, the limitations of limited ingredients means you have to really think about what's going to go with what, especially if you have to make 5 different dishes. I'm reasonably happy with the way that went. So let's give some scores out of 10. So I think probably breakfast, I think it's got to be like 4 out of 10. It was a bit of a disappointment. It was okay, but it was just a bit lackluster. Lunch starter, I'm going to give that 5 out of 10 because it's got potential. It's a good idea. It was just a bit poor execution. The main, mushroom risotto, or I think we'd better say mushroom savoury rice, was good. I'm going to give that a 6 out of 10, I think. Dinner main, spicy rice, I think 7 out of 10 for that because that rice was amazing. And actually that barbecue cauliflower, even though that was a really simple recipe, was really good. I'm going to do that again. And the dessert, I think I'm going to give 8 out of 10 because that tasted great in every way. I think the only way I would possibly improve that would be to make the jelly a little bit more wobbly, a little bit more dilute, and perhaps serve it with something creamy like ice cream if that's available. I think my only one big regret of the whole day is beef dripping. Beef dripping is really not a great fat to work with for these other ingredients. If we'd happened to have got potatoes or flour, beef dripping would have been fantastic. We'd have got really crispy potatoes or we'd made some really lovely batter. But beef dripping with rice and eggs, difficult. But that's the whole point, I suppose. Anyway, I hope that was interesting. I certainly enjoyed that. I hope you did too. Thanks for watching and I hope to see you again soon.